Good cue, guys. Real good cue. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Harmonix live stream. I am your host, HMX Henry. How are you guys doing? Okay, great. That's awesome. We're going to move right along. So this is the Harmonix live stream. In case you have not tuned in, get ready for a terrific ride of just general nonsense, mostly just us talking. I don't know why you would want to watch that, but here you are, and we love you for it. We will talk about all of the games that we have going on right now, which is basically Disney Fantasia Music Evolved. But every once in a while, we will try out some Rock Band and Dance Central stuff for you, kind of dig through the archives and take a trip down memory lane. This week, we have a special guest. I'm going to say the most special guest we've ever had on the show. Wow. Bearing in mind, we had a Ron on the show last week, so setting the bar pretty high. We're going to be looking at some Disney Fantasia stuff. But before we do that, I wanted to give you guys a quick Rock Band Network update. We recently pushed 2 new songs out through the RBN pipeline, which is not a massive amount of content, but it's pretty cool because RBN has been down kind of intermittently since June, and we have not been able to push songs through as intended. But we had a million different people on the IT and live ops side working basically day and night just on Rock Band Network, and we hopefully have those issues resolved finally. So we have 2 new songs from Blue Fusion and Richard Campbell. We have a few more songs that are still stuck in the pipeline, but we're working to free those up, and then hopefully in coming weeks we will have RBN stuff resume as normal. So that is definitely worth applauding. Thank you, Pope. I appreciate that. That is a good enough segue, as good a segue as we'll ever get to sit down and start with the real show. You ready, Pope?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to sit down now.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
So magical.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing very well.
Awesome. And Annette, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yay.
It's Daniel, everybody. Daniel's our special guest, our most special guest ever. Are you ready to deliver on that huge
Suck it, Iran.
No
That's what I have to
pressure.
say.
No? Okay.
I'm way more special than Iran.
Yeah, I would say that. So we have brought you on the show to kind of continue this Disney Fantasia Music Evolved discussion. We showed off some super early demo stuff last week with Iran looking at Mood Lake. And this week, we are going to talk about a section we called Lovebirds with you. So you're our Lovebirds guy.
So it's interesting, Iran and I were actually, leading the team basically through a lot of the early pre-production, and so we both have a lot of perspective on the journey, and sort of how we started, what we were interested in, and how that sort of evolved over the course of, what was, I think, the longest game development cycle we've ever had at the studio.
It's been a while.
It's been forever. But so yeah, it's so Lovebirds actually is one of the it's an evolution of the Mood Lake idea, and it eventually evolved into what we call discovery gameplay, and we've shown versions of that at E3 and sort of around at different conventions.
Yeah, we've shown that off on the stream a couple times, so hopefully folks watching have a good idea of what we're talking about.
But so it was designed to be very sort of Fantasia-y, right? The idea that you could tell a story through music, and where Mood Lake was very open-ended, and it's like hey, the player can sort of do what they want. There's no game.
Yeah.
Lovebirds was actually an attempt to put together sort of a very linear story, where there was a goal, and the idea of the story is that you have 2 birds, a red bird and a blue bird, and these birds are in love. And over the course of the level, they come together and sing a beautiful song and then fly off into the sunset. And the player's job is to basically, bring these birds together through physical gesture and kind of musical interaction.
So kind of jumping from Mood Lake, which was a very, as the title suggests, a very mood-driven piece, now kind of layering the narrative on top of that, getting a little bit closer to the idea of structured narrative gameplay.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time thinking about the film and sort of what it is about the film, and that is interesting, and how you could adapt some of those vignettes to interactivity and gameplay. And it was actually it's been the most challenging component, I would say, of the development cycle. Is how do you take this passive experience and turn it into something that's interactive, that still sort of hits sort of a quality bar with respect to animation and storytelling, and yet where the player feels like they're in control and they're creating music as they play. And I mean, it's we had a lot of masters to serve, I think, in sort of the overall development. And so what I liked about Mood Lake was that it was gorgeous. It was sort of a high-polished showpiece that we created both for ourselves to sort of establish sort of an art bar that we were comfortable with, and then also sort of to help a conversation with our guys at Disney, who were also very curious about how the gameplay might manifest, and what an interactive version of Fantasia might be. That's sort of the million-dollar question here. And so this was a piece that we put together that was part of kind of the tail end of our pre-production phase. It was designed to really address a lot of questions that might then help us put together our production plan. And what ended up happening is, this was very successful in a lot of ways, but then it sort of opened up a lot of questions around replayability and musical expression and all of these other things that we really wanted the game to represent, that this very linear story maybe didn't represent so well.
Yeah, so it's ultimately not in the game, to be clear now, but a lot of pieces of it still kind of live on, I think you would say.
Yeah, totally.
And this is about how old? A year old?
About
at this
a year,
point?
yeah. I guess a little over a year. I think this was a thing that we brought out to Disney, I think in April of last year.
Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah. So if people have been tuning in on the show, they should hopefully be able to kind of track that evolution from Mood Lake to Lovebirds to what they've seen as finished demos that we've been trotting out at E3 and Gamescom and PAX.
Yeah, and so this was well before the time where we jammed kind of pulse gameplay into the discovery scenes, and so I think this was really an idea where the discovery gameplay would be sort of a level unto itself. And at the same time we had a million other prototypes, some of which we've shown people, and many of which will sit on forever. Yeah. But we really had this sort of smorgasbord of musical gameplay that we were trying to jam together, and where we ended up, I think, is really elegant. I love our design. It took a lot of trial and error to kind of figure out how these different pieces might fit together in a way that that made sense.
Yeah, for sure. Annette, you had included this in the demo that you prepped for PAX. Is this your favorite of the 3 vignettes, do you think, that we showed?
I think it is. It definitely, at least Mood Lake was very, very powerful and just very emotional, and there's a lot of different, effects going visually and from an audio perspective that were really intense and kind of dark in some parts, which is really neat. But this is sort of kind of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit. It's even in a short period of time, these guys did a really good job telling a really cute story between these 2 birds, which is really cool. And it does really kind of pull back from, it's very clearly inspired by Fantasia. There's some stuff that happens in the demo, which you guys will see in a little bit, that definitely kind of calls back to some of the more psychedelic parts of the original Fantasia, which is really cool.
So people probably want us to stop talking about it and start showing it. Pope, you ready to cue up that video?
Sorry, I'm arguing with people in the chat.
Oh, Pope. Oh, well, that's always a good use of your time, Pope, arguing with people in the chat.
Not to be negative, but this game's probably going to flop.
Oh, okay. Well, no, that's not negative at all. That's totally constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good comment.
Thanks.
So I'm ready now.
Oh, so Pope's ready. So we are now going to show you Lovebirds. This is about a year-old concept piece that we made kind of on the road to where we are at with Disney Fantasia Music Evolved right now. And we'll be back after to kind of walk you through the demo with a little bit of commentary afterwards.
So you can see it twice.
Yeah.
Get excited.
All right. Go ahead, Pope.
Whenever you're ready.
Isn't that nice?
That was beautiful.
That's so nice.
I'm very proud of that.
I hadn't
actually.
seen that since we originally demoed that in front of the company.
It's so funny because it was so much work to put that together, and it's so weird to me that sort of is sitting in the vault somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, like very few people have interacted with it. One of the things that I think doesn't read so well in the video is sort of what the player's relationship to that story is, and sort of how the player is actually having to move to tell the story. And so, that was really sort of the trick, was how to tell a story, how to put the player sort of in the role of storyteller almost, where if the player doesn't do anything, nothing happens. These birds don't get together. They don't fly off into the sunset that way. And,
so there's those elements of like gestural beat match that we've seen in more polished versions of Fantasia that kind of like lead those birds from one area to the other.
That's right. And even elements of like puzzle gameplay where you sort of have to figure out sort of what are we asking you to do here, and the beat match component is, okay, if you don't do the right thing at the right time, then nothing happens. And then other times it just loops until you actually do something. And there are components of both of those types of gameplay in this level.
Cool. So we're going to run through again and give a little bit of a play-by-play commentary and hopefully give people a better understanding of what they're looking at. To reiterate, this is an earlier version of Disney Fantasia Music Evolved, not final gameplay. We're still a ways out from release. We're coming out sometime 2014. Haven't announced a specific date yet, but we wanted to show you guys some of this early kind of demo pitch gameplay stuff to give you an idea of where we came from and how we got to where we are now.
Yeah, to be super clear, like this is total like cutting room floor stuff. Like this does not appear in the game anywhere. This is kind of the only time you'll ever
Showing you
see
all
this.
the secrets.
Yeah, an exclusive just for you and everyone that's watched the video on our live stream, our YouTube channel, or went to PAX.
So the first thing the player has to do actually is find the bird. And so you see those little sort of brackety icons. Those are telling the player that they have to zoom in, at which point they realize there's something behind the moss curtain, and they part the curtain and the bird flies out and starts singing a song. Now, one of the first challenges that we had was, how the hell will the player know what it is they're supposed to do? And so here we thought, okay, we really need to visualize music. So you have your cursor, and there are these flowers that if you cursor over them, they have this little sort of icon thing, and then if you gesture at the right time, the music travels from the bluebird to the flower. And so really this part of the level is about taking the bird song and sort of populating it across this path. One flower passes it to another flower, passes it to another flower, and eventually it gets to this lily pad, at which point you take this weird trippy journey through this log.
So even in this early stage, there was like a strong interaction between like the idea of bringing magic into the world, like using your music to kind of influence the magic in the world of Fantasia.
So like what is the player doing here, for instance?
So this was actually a moment of player improvisation. So this is a scripted sort of magic carpet ride through this log where the player is sort of raising their arms, and as they sort of move the cursor around the interior of this log, they sort of grow these flowers, play the music. There's actually like a sitar solo that Amin Zaroukian, one of our sound designers, put together. It gets like super tripped out, backwards guitar-y, and all of that is being driven by the player's gesture. The player is basically just wildly gesticulating and moving their hands around and creating music.
A little freestyle dance.
A little freestyle dance.
That's a really cool way that Fantasia has kind of departed from traditional Harmonix games, where you have that element of improvisation and you're able to kind of put your own personal creative stamp on it.
Totally, like real-time music generation and sort of creative expression, and these are sort of new frontiers for Harmonix development. It's a thing that we've tried to do many times, and this game actually was the perfect opportunity for us to really double down there, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done. So here the bluebird's melody has sort of traveled via this kind of flower conduit to the redbird, who hears the bluebird's melody and sings his own counterpoint. And here you have another sort of similar puzzle where you have to sort of take the redbird's melody and kind of channel it through these vines to this leaf, which then falls, and eventually the bluebird hears the redbird song, which is actually a counterpoint of the bluebird song in the first place.
Oh my god.
So the birds are aware of each other, and they flock to their little perches, where they then
Get down to their dirty
they
bird
get down to
business.
their dirty bird business. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
So this is another puzzle where, you know, it's kind of a plate spinning game where you have to kind of activate these sunflowers and then, like, you know, grab these sort of ferns and unfurl
We actually
them.
shortened for time, but there's a lot more interaction sort of happening with the person and the flowers, and then this happens.
Right, so it's kind of, you know, if you can keep everything going, you get this big peak state and the environment comes into sort of full bloom. The birds do their thing and fly off to do the rest of their thing.
Super effortless.
I mean, the music design for this whole level is really interesting because we wanted to sort of take a standard classical theme that people might recognize and then sort of, you know, sort of add a lot of creative expression for the player, but also really evolve it sort of to help tell the story. So that is, you know, there's a theme in there that if you're a classical music aficionado, you'll recognize, but by the end of the level, it's, you know, it's basically our own.
That's wild.
It's pretty cool.
So how you've been a long time Harmonixer, I guess. How did you go from being the guy who, like at the height of the Guitar Hero craze, kicked a reporter in the balls, to now being the guy driving like the most earnest and emotional title we've ever worked on?
Listen, if over the course of game development, I've had to get heavy with a bunch of people as it relates to this beautiful, creative, expressive, you know, these games don't just make themselves, you know.
It's true.
You know, it's
Gotta
been,
break a few eggs.
It's been a wild ride. You know, I've done a lot of different things at Harmonix. I started in QA in 2001 on frequency, and you know, at that time I was like, you know, I liked, you know, sports games mostly, and you know, I sat in a room with Josh Randall and Greg, and you know, and we played a demo version basically of frequency, and I was like, what in God's green earth is happening? I had no idea what it was, and they were like, good, nobody does, you're perfect. so I worked on that and worked on sort of the net expansion for that, and then moved into production for Amplitude and worked on iToy Anti-Grav and was the producer on Guitar Hero 1, the project leader on Guitar Hero 2. Everything sort of changed when we went into the Rock Band business. I sort of put together and managed a team that was responsible for all the hardware development. I spent a lot of time in Chinese factories building plastic instruments. Came back to software development for Rock Band 3, was the project director for that. And then when, you know, after Rock Band 3, we did a lot of kind of, you know, skunkworks prototyping work, and a lot of that work actually ended up sort of seeding the foundation of Fantasia. I was with Josh actually. We were on a team that was doing music motion prototypes. No game. It was just sort of how could you use Kinect to interact with music, and we'd put together a lot of really fun prototypes. You know, you squat and an air horn goes off and you're sort of reaching out into the space and grabbing different stems and putting, you know, different kinds of music together, and that sort of flowed right into the Disney conversation when they approached us about Fantasia. So it's been, you know, 12 years of craziness. Every year has been an absolute adventure, and you know, that's. I'm fairly certain that my days of, like, you know, injuring people are not over. Like, there's a long future of physical abuse still in front of me.
Okay, all right, good.
In fact, I might be at the receiving end of some of that. You never know.
Okay, what goes around comes around.
I know.
It's only fair.
Yep.
But safe to say that anyone watching the show would not wish any personal harm on you. They should. I mean, I would go so far as to say that anyone watching the show owes you a huge debt of gratitude for all the games that you've worked on. How about that?
Good stuff.
How about that?
I like that. I'd like to think that.
Yeah.
Skippy
Seems
Deluxe
fair.
requests that Daniel kick Aaron in the balls.
That does not seem like a fair
I'm not a witness.
request.
If it wasn't for this microphone cable. It's like a tether. I can't get you.
And this is like a Disney family-friendly show.
Can we even say the word balls?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nuts.
Ron did. There's musical balls. Whacking balls was the concept name of the game.
Have to
He
use
said.
the word at least once a week now. It's not too bad.
Good job, Ron.
That's right. The
right.
Harmonix testicles connection.
Well, we gotta change the name of the show now, Pope.
Did you discuss how we got from Lovebirds to where we are now? Why we scrapped that? And
I would not go into depth about how we got from Lovebirds to where we are now, because if all goes well, in next week's show,
Not next week.
next week, 2 weeks, because next week is Columbus Day. Good reminder. So we are not going to be here next Monday, but that would be Monday the 21st. If all goes well, we will have Sasso on as our guest.
Yes.
To talk about the next stage
We will
in
have a
Fantasia
guest.
development.
You're going to need a bigger couch.
Yeah,
He can just have this whole couch.
yeah. Just sprawl out.
Yeah, so we'll
Sasso
actually
is the
talk
large
about
man.
that a little bit, how we got to this point to where we are today. So that'll be really cool. So tune in. It'll be part 3 of this crazy game development adventure that we've been on.
If you want to jump the line, you can go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/harmonixmusic, and you can see the full panel that Annette orchestrated. Should be the most recent video,
Yes.
I think, and that
believe
has
so.
Mood Lake, and that has Lovebirds, and then it has the third and final scene with
ahead.
commentary from John Drake and Matt Bach and Chris Nichols from Disney, and Jonathan, our designer from Harmonix as well.
Some good stuff.
But we'll give some extra dirt
Yeah.
next week or 2 weeks from now.
Yep, and we'll probably say balls.
Yeah,
So there's
that's a guarantee. That's the Harmonix guarantee. So we will see you guys. Oh, Pope.
What?
Oh, Pope. Oh.
I feel really bad leaving, like someone else in the chat wanted to know that too. Leaving them completely hanging. How about Daniel says like what worked, what didn't work from the Lovebirds?
Sure.
In terms of what lessons you learned from it.
Sure. I would say the biggest sort of issue that we had with Lovebirds had to do with replayability. And actually this sort of, was an issue that we had with kind of linear, like narrative storytelling in the first place, right? I think there was a sense where we wanted these levels to really, in order to generate true sort of expression on the part of the player, they can't all have the same ending. They can't all be the same every time you play them. And while I think the Lovebirds story is really beautiful and evocative, and it is interactive in a lot of really novel ways, once you've played it, you're basically done with it. And we really wanted both kind of the entire game to have that sort of sense that you'd want to come back to it and play it a little differently, sort of make different decisions and have the game reflect that. And that was sort of the biggest criticism that I had, and that we had, Disney had. On the plus side, I think we really were very happy about sort of the art bar and just sort of how we were able to visualize some of these abstract concepts. The way music looked. It's like, hey, there are these red particles that are a song that this bird is singing, and that is that's hard to do. And I thought we did a pretty decent job of that. I think the thing that I'm most proud about as it relates to this particular story is the idea that people see it, they're like, oh, that looks like what I would imagine Fantasia might look like. It really does connect back to the film in a very straightforward way, which I think is very cool. And that was what we were trying to do. So I think it was very successful as an experiment. It taught us a lot about what we wanted to do, and also sort of presented a bunch of issues that we had to then solve, which I think we have. I think we've done a really good job.
Yeah, and that's definitely why we wanted to show each part of that PAX panel kind of individually, to be able to show that progression and kind of and see how just like the gameplay process and just development works in general, that you make some mistakes and then you make incremental advances, and you just keep moving the ball down the field, and you get closer and closer to what the final shippable
And then you
retail
just
version
stuff
is.
it in there.
And then you just say, just ship it, just get it out of here.
Just put it in the
I'm
box.
done with it. But yeah, I think that once people catch the third act, they'll be able to see once we incorporate some more of the pulse gameplay that there's a little bit more improvisation.
Yeah, and by pulse, I mean the actual performance part of the game.
Yeah.
You might have seen some demos of people playing Bohemian and things like that.
Spoiler alert, I think there are more birds. It was like we were obsessed with birds. Like almost every prototype that we had birds in them. To the point where we were actually at the green light with Disney, and we're playing through all this stuff, and they're like, what is it with you guys and birds? And Greg was speechless. He didn't know what to do. He's like,
not in my talking points.
It's like, yeah, we love birds. Birds are really cool. They fly. It's awesome.
That's sweet.
Yeah. No argument from me. Pope, any arguments in the chat about birds?
Nope, just a lot of Vine spam.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Fantasia birds evolved.
Yep.
I like it.
Good.
Any questions in the chat?
I asked a few minutes ago whether they had questions. People want to see more of Yen Sid.
Okay.
People love birds.
Cool.
Not a lot of questions.
Well, they can tune in 2 weeks from now. For a helpful reminder, you can subscribe to the channel. There's a button somewhere, either above or below. Subscribe, and then you will get a handy email reminder when the show goes live 2 weeks from now, October 21st, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We will see you then.
We got 2 questions.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, you're the worst possible human.
All right, this one's for Daniel. He'll love this one.
Oh, God.
Why was there no Led Zeppelin in Rock Band or Guitar Hero?
Oh, well, I'll tell you why. It's because I can't tell you why.
Next question.
Because licensing is hard.
No, it's not. Well, yes, it is because of that, but it's also it's because Led Zeppelin are basically on a tier of human existence where they can do whatever they want. They don't owe anybody anything, and so it's like I don't want to say. I mean, I'll say this: it was not for lack of effort. But getting all those guys in a room together and sort of, putting together a proposal that they were all sort of unilaterally psyched about was impossible. So, I don't want to rule anything out for the future, but it is sort of the elusive holy grail of music gaming. I mean, oh my God.
Well, that's one of those things where it's like, they don't need the money.
Nope.
They don't need the exposure.
Nope.
They've got lives of their own. They're either still playing or they've got like a million other things that they're responsible for. And being able to, like you said, just kind of like getting everyone lined up. It's enough of a task for like Bare Naked Ladies to be able to land a band like that for Rock Band. So once you start hitting those bands like AC/DC and Beatles, who we were able to snag, like that in and of itself is a minor miracle.
I'm going to also say it's like what was awesome about the Beatles was that we were able to connect with those guys on a personal level about the power of the medium, right? What it is about video games that's really cool. And I think we've actually had a really hard time talking to folks from a sort of pre-video game generation where they're like, I don't know what do games do for me. I don't play a lot of games, and it's like it's a hard conversation to have with a guy like Robert Plant, who does not have he doesn't play a lot of video games. And so in terms of connecting kind of the awesome interactive power of the experience to those personalities, it's there's a lot of challenges there.
Similarly, I think there's probably an interesting challenge in talking to people in a post-Beatles Rock Band era where they saw what we did for Beatles Rock Band, and that's like the bar's kind of set there now, and so.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm not making any promises, but if Led Zeppelin, if what it took was to put together like a like Led Zeppelin Rock Band extravaganza, like I would personally be pretty motivated to put an awesome design together. It would be phenomenal.
Balls in your court.
Yeah.
Come on, Led Zeppelin.
Make it happen.
All right, last question.
Last
God.
question.
Mickey Mouse in the game.
That I don't think we're prepared to answer that question. I will say Mickey Mouse has made cameos in every Fantasia that has been produced to date, and so you can draw your own
Yeah,
conclusions.
Mickey wasn't even supposed to be in Fantasia, right? Was that the story?
Well, there was
movie?
Fantasia wasn't really a thing, you know. Like the
Sorcerer's Apprentice was the kind
Right.
of the standalone, and they said, well, this is how much it's going to cost to put this together, and they said, well, no one's ever spent that much money on an animated short before, and so Walt then kind of turned around and said, well, okay, we're going to make it into a feature-length film, and we're going to package that short with all these other vignettes, and then it's going to be this big, huge thing.
Yeah, so I've heard that story. Another story that I've heard actually is that, you know, Walt and Mickey have this really weird relationship. Like Mickey embodies so much of like Walt's weird creative passion. He was like a child to this guy, and his popularity was waning, and Walt was looking for some like, you know, monumentally newsworthy showcase to sort of bring the mouse back into the public eye. And you know, and Sorcerer's Apprentice was, you know, was huge. You know, it was like, as a short, it sort of helped redefine the mouse. And
The mouse.
the mouse. But so I don't know. I mean, there are tons of stories about sort of the relationship between the Sorcerer's Apprentice and Fantasia, and you know, Mickey's role in Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. You know, I'll say, you know, we've spent a lot of time pouring through the archives at Disney and sort of talking to some of the creative minds behind Fantasia as a concept. You know, all the Disney brand people and folks at Feature Animation, and you know, we have put together what I think is a pretty authentic version of the film. You know, it really harkens back to kind of some of the creative pillars of the film, and then also there are these, you know, a handful of, you know, distinct quotes to the movie, which I think are very cool, that, you know, a lot of the Disney faithful will recognize immediately.
Cool. So you ready now, Pope?
Yep.
You sure? All right. So officially ready.
Official sign off.
So once again, October 21st. We'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.